Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be talking about the big news of the day as River now tries to join me on camera because that's just what she does. She likes to disrupt things constantly. River, I love you. I love you, but you gotta go. And that big news, of course, is that Taika Waititi is apparently rumoredly being courted to have his own Star Wars movie, and this was an exclusive broken by The Hollywood Reporter with the question, will the Force be strong with this one? Following the recent installment of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, the space fantasy franchise is set to go on pause. Gee, I wonder why. In terms of theatrical movies, that does not mean the process has ground to a halt. Taika Waititi, the filmmaker behind the Oscar-nominated Jojo Rabbit, which is a okay film, I think it's vastly overrated, and Thor Ragnarok, which I personally love, though I know many of you hate, has been approached to develop a Star Wars movie, sources tell The Hollywood Reporter. It is unclear where things stand in those talks. It is also unclear whether the project is separate from the one being developed by Kevin Feige, with whom he closely worked on Ragnarok, or a separate Star Wars project. Disney and Lucasfilm, producers of Star Wars movies, had no comment. So basically, this seems like an inside source, which I think is so interesting that people will look to this and say, ooh, it's an inside source at The Hollywood Reporter, and so therefore we'll trust it. But then when inside sources tell things to people like Jeremy Geeks and Gamers, then we have to be critical of it. I just find that hilarious and the hypocrisy of it all. But anyway, what does that actually mean for Star Wars? Well, remember, Taika Waititi directed the final episode, Chapter 8, Redemption of the Mandalorian, and overall, it was a pretty solid episode. It got a 9.4 on IMDb, which really doesn't mean all that much. But as far as episodes go, it was seen as being a very solid episode, a very solid ending to a series that had a few very strong episodes, a couple of okay episodes, and then a couple of really bad episodes. So overall, pretty mediocre series. But the fact that he had the ending of the series and that he did a pretty good job with it seems to indicate that this is a guy that probably would be able to handle a Star Wars story on his own, whether that be a TV series or a movie. And the reason why I say probably a movie is because we know that he has been able to handle movies in the past, whether that was a film like What We Do in the Shadows, which was a hilarious mockumentary, Thor Ragnarok, which was obviously a very strong departure away from the previous Thor films, which I personally enjoyed because a lot of the characters, again, that's just me. Korg is still one of my all-time favorite MCU characters, even though, of course, I've got my issues with the MCU and Disney as of now. And then you have, of course, films like Jojo Rabbit, which is getting some Oscar nomination buzz, which really doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but Taika obviously understands how to make movies. He understands how to direct movies, and based on this, he understands how to direct TV shows as well. And yeah, there were some people that were definitely very critical of the humor that seemed to be in this final episode, the type of Taika Waititi humor that they are not fond of, but then he was also able to deliver in a lot of other aspects of it, including the action, the direction, and the overall character developments that happen in this final episode especially. So what I think it really goes to show you is that, yes, he would probably have a movie similar to an episode, if it was a Star Wars movie, very similar to this one, where it would have some of that quirky type comedy, but also it would be a coherent movie and a coherent story. If there's one thing that Taika can do, it is to at least give us a coherent narrative. I mean, even though I think that Jojo Rabbit is an overrated film, I can't deny that the film is indeed, in fact, well, as far as, well edited, well acted, for the most part, well directed as far as the actual, the directions that the characters go and how they're brought about and the consistency with it all. My biggest problem, of course, with that film actually is his portrayal of Adolf Hitler, because I just didn't really find it all that funny. It wasn't that I thought it distasteful. It wasn't that I thought it bad. It just, to me, wasn't all that funny. And I think that when a movie like Jojo Rabbit's being pushed as a comedy and it's not really all that funny, that's where the problems come in. But Star Wars really isn't known for being a laugh out loud type franchise. And so I think that having these small, little, tiny moments of laughter, like, for example, what we had in Ragnarok, could actually be beneficial to a Star Wars film. This probably is not going to be a very popular opinion. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are already hating on this choice, or on this seemingly choice, because again, this has not been confirmed yet. Even the people themselves who say our sources tell us, producers have not said anything, and we cannot actually confirm or prove that this is the case, except for the fact that our source told us, and he is, of course, already attached to the Star Wars universe. Now, this really wouldn't surprise me all that much, because there is this connection. One, Taika Waititi has, of course, worked with Jon Favreau, Jon Favreau, of course, being the one in charge of The Mandalorian. And also you have the gigantic Marvel man himself, Kevin Feige, who he has also worked with as well. And Kevin Feige, it looks like, is going to have a lot more power in the future of Star Wars as people like Bob Iger step down in 2021. And I imagine Kathleen Kennedy retires, moves on, whatever, by 2021 is what I think will likely happen. And if it doesn't happen, at that point, I really think they're idiots, because Kathleen Kennedy has proven that she just has no idea what she's doing. People continue to try and defend the Rise of Skywalkers being this giant success, but all I see is what started off at a $2 billion film with The Force Awakens has dropped now $1 billion, because again, over $1 billion even, because you got to adjust that, that 2015 number for inflation, meaning that this film, in its last and final film of this franchise, has had a major drop, and so things are not looking good on the film side. So maybe someone like a Taika, someone who is able to make films that are for the most part enjoyable. Thor Ragnarok did very well at the box office. It was very well received by a lot of fans, even though I'm friends with a lot of people who were not fans of it, who absolutely, in some cases, hated it. We can't deny that the box office for that film was indeed quite strong, and so Taika might just be exactly what the Star Wars universe needs. As I said before, do I think that he'll do a great job? I think that he definitely has the pedigree to show that in all likelihood he would, but is there a chance that he could also make it really bad? Yes, absolutely. I mean, just go ahead and look ahead to Thor Love and Thunder, look to what seems to be the direction of that film. I really don't like the direction, but how much of that is Taika and how much of that is, Kevin Feige trying to push the MCU in another direction, in a more woke direction? That is, of course, the big question mark. And as we all know, we can't always put things on the directors. But of course, Taika Waititi has also gone on Twitter and has done his typical rants that were very akin to that of Rian Johnson, kind of mocking fans, mocking things like that. So again, I think any criticism of Taika Waititi is, for the most part, pretty well warranted, but I also look to the man's work. Even if the guy is going to be an asshat, if he can at least show me that he can, direct an episode, is a competent director, which he has shown me with The Mandalorian, with things like Thor Ragnarok, What We Do in the Shadows, and even Jojo Rabbit, a film that I didn't like, but technically was a fine film, then for the most part, I have pretty amount of strong confidence in him, especially just in comparison to what we've previously gotten. I think J.J. Abrams has kind of shown that he is just not able to produce a coherent story from beginning to end. He might be able to start off with a strong beginning, but he can't end a story worth anything, especially with, I'm assuming, a lot of the studio interference that happened in The Rise of Skywalker. And Rian Johnson, of course, being the only other name attached to Star Wars, has shown that he does not have any idea or clue about how to work within the context of canon or a story. Yeah, you might have been able to make a film that looked pretty, but that doesn't mean that the film was any good, because guess what? It was not. But anyway, what are your thoughts about the Taika Waititi story? Again, as I said, I think that it's both a good and bad thing. I think that this guy has indeed proven himself in the past. Remember, he did direct this last episode, and yes, I know some of the quirky, funny moments that happened in the very beginning, some liked, some hated. I personally thought it was pretty funny. Are kind of things that you could expect to see in a movie version if he were to have his own movie. However, he does have a past of being able to direct films competently, and at this point in time, I think that the next Star Wars film, at the very least, needs to be competent, whether it's a solo film or whether it is a part of a grander franchise. So I think Taika could be a great choice, but of course, that doesn't make him one of my favorite people. But let me know your thoughts about Taika Waititi. Do you think that he would do a great job with his own Star Wars movie, or starting off a new franchise, working with Jon Favreau, maybe working with Kevin Feige as well? The big question mark to me is how much of an impact is Kevin Feige going to have on the Star Wars universe, especially since the MCU is going in a certain direction. Will Kevin Feige try to bring that direction of so-called representation into Star Wars universe and Star Wars land, where that type of so-called representation has kind of been killing the narrative because they focus more on that than actually telling good, compelling stories, and have tried to make Star Wars into something much less than what it was originally. So let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comments section below. If you like this video, smash the like button, give it a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless. And now I want to give a shout out to my January Patreon members: animation commentator Brian P, Dion, Divex, Elizabeth M, Enrique Evangelista, fan addicts of film, Father Christopher Miller, Hail Father, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, JJ Jonathan Jerembeck, Lady T, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Perpetual Punster, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Sir Lanceloto, Theodore Bendon, The DJD Show, Those Two Ball Guys, and Tina B. and Sharon Ferguson. Sharon! Thank you so much for being Patreon members. And of course, to my Subscribe Star peeps, Larry, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2Cool99, Darkstar57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nebanon G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you so much for supporting me this month. You guys freaking rock. And a special news shout out to Jeff Lebowski and Steve Glasker. God bless.